Alright, once more. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the channel. My name is Louis Baton. Thanks for stopping by. So, let me open the stream by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm coming to you, live from. The Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and welcome any Indigenous people joining us today. So, how you going? If you haven't stopped by before, as I've said, my name is Louis Baton. I'm an Australian left-wing progressive streamer. I like to talk about stuff like generally workers' rights, a lot of intersectional rights. I like to talk about masculinity quite a bit too. I've got a couple of videos coming out related to masculinity very soon. I wrote the script for one yesterday. Started the script for a different video last night, so I'm hoping to get that finished today. Maybe. Depends. There's a lot of research for that one. And then the other video about masculinity, I'm going to try and get that out. If not today, or not video, but the script, if not today, then over the weekend. Or at least I want to try film on Sunday. I reckon it's possible. It's Friday now. I'm going to sit down, nut it out, get all of the information together, write the script, then I'll be ready to go. And I even want to try and get planned to shoot all 3 on Sunday. Big project. I've always filmed my videos one at a time, even if I've had the ideas for multiple ones. So yeah, it is going to be fun. I'm very excited about these 3 videos that are coming out. Oh, and I should even preface this topic that, hey, like, I'm streaming right now, but I also do prepared content over on my YouTube channel. I'm talking about prepared content when I mean videos. So hey, it'd mean a lot if you'd follow the Twitch channel, but also jump over to YouTube and subscribe to me there. Because while the streams go up on YouTube, I also do prepared content over on the YouTube channel. So of a much, obviously this is a streaming setup. Prepared content is actually sitting down, making a video. Generally they're fairly short. They're approximately 10 minutes each. They're about that. So it covers a topic without it being too long, but giving you enough information of my thoughts on the idea and enough to go on. However, I'm feeling that at least 2 of these videos that I've got planned are going to be at least 20 minutes, I reckon. I'm not sure. It depends on how things work out once I've written them out. But I want them to be a little of like the less short, informative kind, a bit more of like a longer video essay. It just depends on how it works out. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. It's not going to be like an hour and a half, like ContraPoints tier, video essay. That's just not the kind of content that I want to make. Even if it was a topic that I was very interested in. But yeah, that's going to be fun. Well, 2 out of 3 of them are going to be like that. The third one is going to be a very short video. It's purposefully designed to be short because, no spoilers, but the whole point around the topic is that the idea is you can explain this topic so simply, it can be done in a literal minute. So that's fun. So yeah, that's what I've got planned for the weekend. That's why I didn't stream yesterday. I was just a bit like, feeling a bit flat about streaming. So instead, I wrote out the script. So hey, I was still productive for the channel. So, like I said, you can subscribe to me on YouTube, jump over there. You can also follow me on Twitch, join the Discord, the link down below. And as you can see on screen, we have our daily dono goal for, to contribute to buy me a pizza. Excuse me, if you have a couple of extra bucks lying around that you don't know what to do with, and hey, why not send it my way? Contribute to buy me a pizza. I do love pizza, but I am a poor student, so there's the link if you feel so inclined. Now, anyway, what's been happening? What's his face died? The I can't remember his name. The warmonger, the US guy, the Iraq warmonger. So yeah, glad to see that he's gone. That's some good news for once. I do have some good news. Well, actually, it might not be good news. To cover today. I don't know, what else has happened? I'm trying to think of what's happened in the world. I suppose the heat wave over in the Pacific Northwest, well, it hasn't ended, but it has at least abated for now. There's no crazy 112, 115, 120 degree days in Canada and North America. But I have seen stories of, talking about how like 50, 60 people have died. And that's just like in one area. That's pretty messed up. Not the death, the fact that we're allowed it to happen. Because I feel like climate change is all I've talked about the last few days. However, we certainly did. We allow this. We did allow this to happen. We could have, decades ago, or probably half a century or more, taken steps to address climate change. However, there's no preventing it now. Instead, we're looking more at just surviving, weathering the storm. There was who was it from? I think was it from the BBC? There's a news story from somewhere. It's talking about like the possible positive impacts of climate change. We're at the point now where we're talking about, what are the positive impacts of climate change? What level of gaslighting is that? Yeah. Oh boy. And Marianne Williamson, who's ran for the Democratic presidential nominee, if you remember, she posted on Twitter today or yesterday talking about how the conversation of climate change has changed to one of it's moved off prevention and it's changed over to like mitigation and harm reduction. And she was talking about how easily the conversation shifted. For years we were talking about like, we need to prevent climate change, and now that the effects are starting to ramp up, the conversation has so seamlessly, it seems, changed to, okay, well, it's too late to stop it, so let's see about battening down the hatches. And her point was, like I was just talking about, like we've been gaslit on climate change for decades, and now that it's actually here, not in full force yet. We're actually, we're actually seeing the effects of it on a much larger scale. Now we're like the gaslighting's continuing, but it's just like, okay, well, yes, okay, we couldn't, we didn't prevent it, but let's see about, just reducing harm, which is really sad and disgusting and quite typical of our society. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how far harm reduction goes in climate change. As horrible as it is, I am curious. Oh, hello. Well, they need to bring them home to deal with the very funny. It's curious. It's funny. The right wing is anti-government authority until a black person steps out of line. Now, I know that the Northern Territory intervention happened under a Labour state government, but it's hilarious how the right wing's so anti-government power, anti-big government, anti-government authority. When it comes to defending the military and the police, pathetic. Pathetic. Seriously. Dear me. I once had somebody legitimately tell me in stream chat, I was talking about the police and government overreach, and they said, and I quote, "Imagine thinking the police is big government. The literal arm of the government through which force is exercised." Yeah, okay. police state isn't an example of big government. Okay. Makes sense. Well, the Celts put them on a planet. What? There was no indigenous Australians in the UK in the 11th century. The fuck are you talking about? Oh dear. So yeah. It's ironic because as anti-war as I am, I'm more pro-troop than the right is. I have this one friend that I have arguments about the military with, where I talk about how conventional, like the age of criminal scum, the Celts, yeah, probably. Yes, they were the Irish. What? I'm a little confused. Forbidden Hood, what are you talking about? Are you saying that black Australians are Irish? The fuck are you on about, mate? Anyway, I've lost my fucking train of thought. Oh yeah, the military. Yeah, so I was talking with him. We talk. We've had a few conversations about it. I say how conventional warfare is over. This idea of soldiers on the ground and tanks and planes and boats. That age of warfare is done. You know, we're now in the age of cybersecurity and drones. So if we want to have a military that can secure a country's borders, then you don't need F-35 jets. What you need to be investing in is cybersecurity, both in an offensive and defensive way. Because think about it, what use are soldiers or a plane carrying a bomb if you can hack into a country's economy and change a 1 to a 0? You know, if you can remotely hack an invading force's electronics, what use are all of their guns and bombs? It's silly. You know, like all that stuff, planes, boats, bombs, runs on GPS. Well, if you can hack the GPS, it can't be touched. What are they going to do? Like, get into a sailing boat and sail across the sea and just not take any, like, mobile phones or anything with them? Come on. You would be as a colonial half-wit to would have no idea of history. You're the one that just said that Indigenous Australians are Irish, so we need more bayonets. Have you seen a hacker wiggle on a bayonet? Well, the bayonet's never going to get to the hacker. The hacker can't be touched by a bayonet because the man carrying the bayonet never lands in his country. And even if an invading force got close, that's what drones are for. So the funny thing is as pacifistic and anti-war as I am, this is still the more pro-soldier position than, like, this is the most pro-soldier position, because this is the kind of military I'm talking about is the kind of military that protects the most, like, the highest number of your own troops' lives. It puts the least amount of lives in danger. It doesn't put people on the ground. It doesn't put people on the front lines. People are safe and secure at a military base, tapping away on a computer and flying a drone manually. Well, not manually, flying a drone remotely. That's the thing. It's a very pro-soldier position. It's about, say, protecting Australian soldiers' lives. Pretty simple. I don't know, there's one friend that I have that I argue about it with, seems to think that, seems to think this is some kind of pipe dream. Ridiculous. Come on. It's so silly. We can absolutely develop this kind of technology. And we should. That's what we should be investing in. How about we just crop spray with biological weapons? Well, I'm afraid that biological weapons are banned in warfare, dickhead. Dumbass. Jesus. And as I said, you wouldn't be able to get close with bioweapons because a remote drone takes out the plane, or we just hack it out of the sky. What an idiot, seriously. Stop thinking conventionally. Get your mind out of this idea of like these two armies marching towards each other to take a hill. That kind of warfare is done. We've been doing it for hundreds of years without changing it up much. But now with the kind of technology we have, that kind of warfare is just completely gone. This idea of a plane flying into another country to drop a bomb, that's impossible. The plane would never get close. Ridiculous. So yeah. Very pro-soldier position. I'm very pro-soldier. Very pro-protecting soldiers' lives. I guess it's my nationalism coming out. It doesn't come out very often. Hey, but when it does, there's some pretty good ideas, such as this. Okay, what a surprise. It's the funny thing about Nazis is that they just can't resist. They're sitting there biting their tongue, trying to wait for at least they set like a 2-minute timer. And once that 2 minutes is up, they've got to tell you that they're a Nazi. Pathetic. Seriously. When the right sends their people, this is the best they have. This is the best the right wing has to send. Pathetic. My. Absolutely cucked shit. So insecure. Little boys with little dicks that can't get hard, who were bullied in school. Girls wouldn't talk to them. Anyway, let's learn about some soldiers. Oops. Alright. Final Australian troops leave Afghanistan as 20-year mission draws to a close. Mission. I like that choice of words. This war is almost as old as I am. Australian troops being in the Middle East, it doesn't seem real now that it's here. The idea of them leaving, at least Afghanistan. Australia has completed its formal troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, ending an almost 20-year military commitment to the war-torn country that claimed 41 ADF members' lives. The recent departure of Australia's final defence personnel comes amid reports that American troops could complete their exit within days, and as Taliban fighters continue to retake districts across Afghanistan. Since 2001, the ADF's mission has been to contain the threat from international terrorism, firstly under Operation Slipper, and then Operation High Road. According to the Defence Department's website, Australia currently contributes around 80 defence personnel to NATO's Resolute Support mission in Afghanistan. They are involved in training, advising and assisting local forces. However, military sources have confirmed to the ABC the last remaining ADF members flew out of Kabul in the middle of June, ahead of a September 11 deadline announced by the US for the withdrawal of all coalition forces. Interesting. So it seems like, oh shit, we can't be in Stan longer than 20 years. We can't mark the 20th anniversary of 9/11 by still being in the Middle East. Operation High Road is done and dusted, but Operation Accordion, the overarching mission in the Middle East, will remain because it has been identified that we still need a staging point in the sandpit. United States media reports suggest American troops could complete the withdrawal or retrograde within days after President Joe Biden outlined an exit strategy in April. The Australian Defence Department has so far declined to publicly confirm the formal end of its NATO-led mission to Afghanistan, or say whether some military personnel will relocate elsewhere in the Middle East. On 15th of April, the Prime Minister announced Australia would finalise the drawdown of our contribution to the NATO-led Resolute Support mission in Afghanistan, the defence spokesperson told the ABC. As Australia brings its contribution to in Afghanistan to a close, the Minister for Defence will be delivering remarks on Australia's role in the days ahead. At the end of May, Australia became the first country involved in coalition military activity to not only announce military withdrawal by September, but the full retreat of its foreign presence, closing its embassy. In recent weeks, fighting has intensified between Taliban militants and Afghan forces, with many government-held districts falling into the hands of the former enemy. Uruzgan, where Australian troops served for close to a decade, could be the first entire province to fall back under Taliban control as fallen militaries withdraw from the war-torn country. The former Chief of Army, retired Lieutenant General Peter Leary, said the formal departure of the Australian troops was an enormously significant occasion. It signifies the end of an era for the ADF. I think we've all known that it's been coming for a long time, but it's no easier to accept now that it's here. I find it as an occasion to reflect and remember, and some of the reflections and remembrances are not easy. Lieutenant General Leary said his thoughts were particularly with the families of the 41 Australian soldiers who died in the conflict, as well as the many others who have suffered physical and mental injuries from their service. Was it worth it? Well, as we face the prospect of a savage retribution by the now ascended Taliban, and I think a return in some ways to the darker ages for Afghanistan, it's really hard to say it was worth it. Germany, which has... Yeah. Wow, okay. So, this is going to piss off the tankies, and I'm going to be called a Western imperialist for this. However, I've heard that this is not a good thing. And even just reading this article, it doesn't seem like a good thing. Now, yeah, it's a really difficult conversation talking about the military presence in the Middle East, because so much of it is like let me say first up that we should not be there. I detest the idea of Australia exerting its military might over another country. However, even as this article just suggests, it seems like the country's not stable enough to fight off the insurgent forces. It seems like, as it says, the Taliban is gaining ground, and that if foreign militaries pull out of the country, it won't be too long until they take power. Now, this is the tanky take on this is just to be completely anti-foreign intervention, which, I mean, in under these circumstances, I can't support. I can't support being anti-intervention when this article alone talks about how the Taliban is regaining ground in Afghanistan. So it's a really difficult situation. I know that Dylan Burns has talked about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and about how it's not a good idea, and about how the I hate this language, but about how the area isn't stable enough without foreign intervention, and about how now is not the time to pull out. But it seems like we're going ahead anyway. Now, I was literally just talking about how, here's stuff that we can do to, reduce the number of military casualties, and here I am advocating for us to stay in the Middle East. But here's the thing. If countries like Australia, Germany, the US pull out, then not only will it leave countries like this vulnerable to rebel insurgents like the Taliban, it'll also make them vulnerable to intervention from countries like China, countries like Russia. So, if we don't do it, they will. And, I'd rather us than them. If there's going to be a foreign military presence in the Middle East, it's better that it's Western democracies rather than let me mute that, rather than Russia or China. I mean, it's a shit situation. But, yeah. I don't know, that's about... Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the details. As I said, if you... Go watch Dylan Burns, because he's talked a whole lot about it. But my view on it is that, to me, when I read the headline that Australian troops had pulled out, I was a little shocked, because this war's been on my entire life. And here we have... Well, not my entire life. Almost my entire life. I'm a few years older than the war. Australian troops have been there almost as long as I've lived. So, for that to actually be over, for the Australian military to be withdrawing its presence in the Middle East entirely, that's crazy. Because this has been going on for 2 decades now, and for it to be actually over... I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It'll be interesting to see what happens if all the Western democracies pull out. Maybe the Taliban take over again, and then maybe, who knows, we end up going back to try and stop them. So, yeah. We will see. We shall see. Good morning from Australia. Arcane Scorched. Does the Netherlands have any presence in the Middle East? We were just talking about how the Australian military has just withdrawn from the Middle East. It still has like a they still have like military officials there who, you know, like for training and advising and stuff, but in terms of like actual soldiers and military presence, that's gone. Pulling out, yeah. I don't know. Like, here's the thing. I'm a strong advocate against Western imperialism, but as I was just saying, if we don't do it, Russia and China will. So, I'd rather it was us. And even just this one article was talking about how the area is really volatile at the moment, and that there's a lot of insurgent fighting happening. So, without the support of foreign militaries, I worry how well the Afghani forces will fare against the Taliban. Some NATO thingy. Yeah, like that's what it was talking about. It was talking about, what was it? It was called, Operation Accordion. Let me see, where was it? Yeah, confirm the formal end of its NATO-led mission to Afghanistan, which must be Operation Accordion. Here we are, yeah. Prime Minister announced Australia would finalise the drawdown of our contribution to the NATO-led Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan. So that's more talking about, not like the soldiers on the ground, but like this kind of stuff, trying to support the local military. Which, I mean, it's a bit of a hard thing to do, to prop up a country that you've spent the last 2 decades destabilizing. So yeah, I'm really worried to see how this will work out. I'm not very optimistic in light of the current circumstances, the current volatility of Afghanistan in the area. As far as experts on this subject go, it seems like they're all universally saying that now's not the time. The area's not stable enough. But I mean, like, when will it be stable? You know. But then if we pull out, Russia and China can come in this, you know, natural resource rich area. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, like, I don't know, like, like we spent the last 2 decades destabilizing the region. Like as bad as foreign intervention is, at least military intervention, as bad as that is, like what we just like we fuck up the country the last 2 decades, and then just be like, okay, have fun fighting the Taliban on your own now. Have fun dealing with Russia and China coming in on your own. Because even if they can fight off the Taliban, they sure as shit can't fight off Russia and China. I don't know. We will see. If the Taliban do take over the country again, then we'll only see an increase in the flow of refugees to first world countries from the Middle East, which, I mean, we already saw how destabilized Europe got from 5 million of them, with the effects of climate change ramping up even more. Combine that with a totalitarian government, another one in the Middle East. Yeah, I think we'll be seeing even more refugees. So yeah, that's going to be fun to deal with. 5 million of them sent Europe hurtling towards far-right fascism. Oh dear. Dear, dear. Hatred towards Islam here in the EU is growing. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like all the news I hear out of the EU, at least a lot of what comes out of what I see, 9 out of 10 times it seems to be focused on Islam. Like I covered on stream, I don't know, a week or so ago about how Hungary had banned all LGBT education. But if it's not something like that, then it's talking about Islam. What was it? Was it France, I think, where like former military officials and members of the government had written an open letter to the government saying how they needed to take a firmer stance against Islam, even though France has already had a really tough stance on Islam. For those on the right, it wasn't tough enough, and it seemed like they were actually pandering when, if you look at it from a nuanced perspective, they haven't, but anyway. They have been warned to act normal or get kicked out of the EU. Oh, man. Wow, seriously? Jesus Christ. Oh, that is funny. Oh, dear. Well, like, isn't that the whole, like, would they really care if they get kicked out of the EU? Because, I mean, fascists hate the EU. They hate the idea of countries working collaboratively together in this collective. They're all about strengthening the borders and strengthening individual nationalistic sovereignty. So it'd be funny. But yeah, they get money from the... Exactly. So... Well, you know, like... I mean, we know what fascists would say about that, you know. But this is why I don't know if I want to laugh or groan whenever I hear leftists talking about revolution, because people don't realize just how far right globally the Overton window has been pushed. The majority of at least developed countries, excuse me, are way more shifted towards the right than the left. This idea of revolution. Well, if we have a revolution, it will most likely result in a fascist dictator. If you look at the countries in Europe, the UK, America, like a leftist revolution would not result in a workers' paradise. We're in a democratic recession. There's like a few countries, like Scandinavia and New Zealand, where, they're not so far right and are much closer to the left. But even in those countries, they've seen democratic setbacks. Like in New Zealand a few years back, the Labour Party won the election, but they were in a minority government, so they had to form a coalition with the fascist New Zealand First Party to achieve a majority. Like, that means that the head of the New Zealand First Party was the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, at the next election, I believe they were able to achieve a majority without New Zealand First, so good. But it just goes to show you that even in these countries like New Zealand, which are usually at the forefront of social change, even in those countries, they're seeing far-right fascism cropping up. And of course, New Zealand had Christchurch, so that pushed a lot of the country, against immigration and made more people xenophobic and anti-Islam. Oh yeah, there's Poland as well. Like Poland is not as bad as Hungary, but I've heard that Poland's not great. 16 parties to vote on, and are those 16 parties they have just as much chance of winning as each other? Because I know that I think in the Scandinavian countries, usually you'll see coalitions of 4, 5, 6 parties come together, which is so different to Australia. Australia has ranked choice voting, but we still have a 2-party system. The Conservative Party in Australia has never been able to achieve a majority. They've never won an election without forming a coalition with the National Party. And the left-wing party, the Labour Party, if it wanted to win, would form a coalition with the Green Party, but I guess they just don't want to win. Left, right, green, animals. But I love the idea of having 16 parties where they have to form, 6 parties have to form a coalition. That's fantastic. That's great for representation. It's great for a level playing field. When you look at, we have all of these choices and every one of them is just as viable as the next. That's amazing. It's unthinkable in a country like Australia or New Zealand or America or the UK, where even in countries that have mixed member, what's MMP, New Zealand, mixed member proportional voting or ranked choice voting like Australia and the UK, countries still have a 2-party system. So to hear from other countries about how several parties, more than a few parties come together to form a coalition, that's exactly what I want to be hearing. They have to form a coalition. One party alone cannot go rule to prevent dictatorships to form, etc. I mean, that's how we end, countries like Australia and America end up with 2-party systems. When we only have 2 viable options, do you want the red team or the blue team? Yeah, I've seen the US election. Either Democratic or Republican, kind of poor options. Not only do you have a 2-party system, but America has first past the post voting, which means that whoever gets 50% of the vote first wins. So, and also they have other rules where a party has to get 5% of the national vote before they get federal funding. And third parties never get 5%. Third parties get maybe 2 to 3% of the national vote. There's so much money involved in US politics. There's so much, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are just money-making machines. The reason that they have, it's only ever those two, of course, first past the post as well, because there's so much money involved. So, even in districts where, say, there's a really strong Greens presence, because of first past the post voting, it's really difficult to get somebody who's not a Dem or a Republican elected. And also that dirt digging. Oh yeah, shit. See, in Australia we have ranked choice voting, which means you can number, just say you have Like when I go to vote, there'll be like 5 to 7 candidates I can pick for in my local election, and so I would put a 1 for Labour, 2 for the Greens. You know, put the Liberals last, of course, to the Conservative Party. Like something like if America had that, then it would be like it would still be a 2-party system like Australia. Like Australia has ranked choice, but it's still 2 parties. However, it would still give the opportunity for third parties to get elected. They wouldn't win the national vote, but they can get some local ones in. Too much money. I mean, there's too much money involved in every election. I don't know. When you say like you don't do dirt digging in the Netherlands, I mean, I don't know. Like, I find that hard to imagine. The fact that there's not people looking for shady stuff that politicians have done. Like, come on, that happens everywhere. Recently, there's been this lawsuit happening in Australia where there's a popular Australian YouTuber who's got about 500k subs called Friendly Geordies, who's being sued by the Deputy Premier of New South Wales because of some videos that he made about the guy where he talked about his corruption, and he's being sued. So he's also made fun of the guy, but it's interesting that major media networks can make fun of politicians or expose their corruption, but when it comes to a YouTuber doing it, suddenly the politician has a problem. Now, I think it's a gross overreach of government power. I don't think that politicians should sue people for making fun of them, because, I mean, if you can't make fun of politicians, who can you make fun of? I mean, if someone's... See, like, defamation's different to mocking or harassment. And if a government here is about to get formed, they also need consent from the King or Queen. Ugh! Do you mean the British King or Queen? Or do you have your own King or Queen? Oh, see, that is... that's one aspect of Australian politics that really needs to change. I remember, because I'm a student and I was studying politics last year, and I was reading about republics. And I was thinking about Australia, and I was like, well, oh, hang on. If we're not a republic, what are we? And I was like, well, we're not a constitutional monarchy. I was like, well, but we're not a republic. Then I was like, oh shit. We are a constitutional monarchy, because if we're not a republic, what are we? Australia's a constitutional monarchy. The Netherlands have their own royal family. Ugh. Look, I'm not a fan of monarchies, alright? I'm an anarchist. Monarchy is a very explicit example of an unjust hierarchy. Now, I would go so far as to say get rid of a monarchy, because I don't think that you can remove the influence a monarchy has on its government, on its people, so long as it exists. But, you know, we need to at least change the laws to prevent monarchies from interfering with elections, because it happens. It's happened in Australia. The Governor-General went to the Queen to get Gough Whitlam removed. It happens. They don't have that much power. Well, see, the thing is, like, people say in Australia, like, oh, the Queen has no power, you know. She, like... And she doesn't. Like, she doesn't have any... Well, she does, because of the Governor-General, you know. Like, it's not a huge degree of power. But the point is... Like I like to say, like, well, if it is only symbolic, then you should have no problem with getting rid of it then. But there's more than just, like, explicit laws giving the monarchy power. Like, if the Queen, in the UK... had come out and said that she didn't support marriage equality, then it never would have passed in the UK. If the Queen had publicly stated that people can vote on the matter how they choose, but she personally did not support marriage equality, there's no way that it would get passed in the UK. Now, that's not her, like, passing a law and saying, no, we can't have marriage equality, but just that social influence, the social capital that the monarchy wields, that's the problem I have. That's why, like, even if it's just symbolic, we should get rid of it. There's too much of that. The danger of that kind of power is too much. You know, and just because the royal family stops being monarchs, like, doesn't mean their position will change. Like, just treat them like we do every other billionaire dynasty, you know? They'll just be like the Walgreens, you know? Just another one of those elusive, rich families. But at least they won't have literal crowns on their heads. But we're a very free country. I know, alright? I'm not saying, like, because you have a monarchy, this is a fascist state. No. But, you know, we can do more. We can do better. We can always do more. Yeah. Like, getting rid of abolishing a monarchy doesn't instantly mean that all inequality in a country disappears. I mean, look at America. America doesn't have a monarchy, and there's a great deal of inequality in the country. There's what's the word? The idea of climbing socially is a bit of a pipe dream in America. True, but that requires a lot of support. Oh yeah, like, here's the thing. Like, in my politics class this semester, there was one guy talking about a republic, and I told him straight up, it's not going to happen. A couple months ago, I was covering on stream how support for a republic in Australia is at its lowest it's ever been since the last time we had a referendum, which I think was in the 80s or 90s, to become a republic. Which is really sad because, as I've stated, I'm not a fan of the monarchy, but a lot of people are. And it's funny because the same people that defend the monarchy are the same people who complain about Chinese interference and Chinese influence and foreign influence on your country. Well, which is it? You can't have it both ways. You like one foreign influence, the British monarchy, but you don't like another. Chinese corporate influence or Chinese government influence. Now, like, I'm not a fan of either, but you can't have one or the other, alright? You know, the same people who have the reactionary take on China are like, clap like circus seals for the monarchy, for a royal baby. And just because Pill Cosby, 69! Why did they pull out of Afghanistan? I wanted baby Afghanistan. Why? I don't actually know why they pulled out of Afghanistan. The article didn't say why. It just seems like they don't want to be there for the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. So they thought, oh, okay, now's the time to go. It doesn't seem like now's the time to go, though, because the region's fairly destabilized. But yeah. Unfortunately, Australia is money, so they say here. Well, there's more money to stay in the Middle East because the longer you're there, the more. Okay, that is an argument. That is an argument for leaving because obviously there's people profiting off the war. Millions, if not billions, of US dollars, gets funneled into the military. Any kind of funding for support programs, social programs, gets pumped into the military instead. Education, healthcare. So that is an argument for leaving Afghanistan. It's like, oh, we can think about ourselves instead. So there is that, I guess. I don't know. We will see. As keen as I am on not seeing the Taliban take power again. I don't know. It's it's two bad decisions. Do you want a foreign military in a country, or do you want your military in a country, or do you want a far right religious fundamentalist military to take over the country? It's a choice between a dog shit or a cat shit sandwich. So yeah, I can't say either way. So yeah. Alright, what else have we got? Speaking of nationalism, let's take a look at a little video. Now, I believe that this has come out in response to, not only are we coming up to July 4th, of course, but I believe Washington, D.C., the conversation about Washington, D.C. becoming a state. Actually, a fungus, welcome to the chat. I'm assuming that the Afghani people felt the same way about the Oz troops leaving as they do about American troops. Well, here's it. Like, I was talking about how, like, it's a really difficult situation. This idea, because I know that Dylan Burns has talked about that now's not the time to pull out. The region's not stable enough. So, as much as I dislike having a military presence in another country, at the same time, even just from this one article that I was reading about Australian troops pulling out, it's talking about how the Taliban are regaining ground in the country. It's a really shit situation either way. Okay, so Poland then, every EU country was asked to give aid for Afghanistan. Polish government, no way. We need the money for the Polish people themselves. Well, I mean, like, how much of that money actually went into, infrastructure and healthcare, education, social programs? Where'd that money really go? Anarcho-doomerism. Oh, God. I mean, we all hate right-wingers. There was a Nazi hanging around in chat before. Unfortunately, they couldn't keep the masks on long enough, so they had to go. And they closed the borders saying, refugees, go away. Well, how are they going to close the borders when they have 500 million people knocking on their door in a few years' time due to climate change? To be honest, I don't give a fuck about the stability of the Middle East after we fuck the Kurds. We aren't there to stabilize it against profit interests. Well, this is why the conversation's so difficult, because if we don't have a military presence there, Russia and China will. Again, like, I'm not saying this is a good situation. I mean, no way saying that this is a positive thing. But if we don't do it, they will. And I would rather have Australian and American military presence there than Russian or Chinese. And again, like, it's a bad situation either way. But either we stay and continue a military presence, we leave, and the Taliban takes over again, or we leave, and Russia and China come in instead. It's bad either way. If we actually wanted to stabilize and bring democracy and enlightenment, then we would have fucked Rojava. Wouldn't have fucked Rojava. Austria banned the building of mosques. Really? Are you serious? Austria... Wow. I didn't know that. Jesus Christ. Actually, Fungus, thank you for the follow. Fuck, I didn't know that about Austria. That's really far right. So much for religious freedom. The right likes to talk about how much they love religious freedom, and yet, there they are, banning mosques. Interesting. Wow. That's fucked up. Actually, Fungus, I think we can benefit from mutual aid agreements to provide aid to countries not invading, destabilize, rebuild. I agree. I definitely agree. But a country needs to have a secure foothold to be able to utilize that. And I'm not super familiar with Afghanistan, but I would be willing to bet that Afghanistan is not stable enough that we can just sit back from afar and send aid, and that'll be enough. Say we get the fuck out, it's been too long. Look, I don't want to be in the Middle East. But if the region's not destable enough, then what, the Taliban comes back in and takes over again? I don't want that. The people are going to get F by the Taliban again, though, exactly. I'm not an American first groper, but we got shit we got to fix here at home that those military funds can help instead. Like, I agree. But then the money's not going to go to social programs either way. Like, if America pulled out of America's going to pull out of the Middle East before 9/11 this year, but all the money that's going to the military the last 2 decades, that's not going to suddenly just do a 180 and get invested into education and healthcare and social programs. You know. I agree that I would love to take money from the military and invest it in social programs. I mean, if Adelaide in Australia didn't get the military budget, then Adelaide would be a truck stop on the way to Perth. But I know America. That money's not going to go to social programs either way. Strengthening bonds of our allies and making new ones can help with those other problems, though. As in, like, the problems of, like, just sending foreign aid. So what we say there for because fear the Taliban might come back. It's not fear that they might come back. They are coming back. Here. Where are we? It was just talking about in recent weeks, fighting has intensified between Taliban militants and Afghan forces, with many government-held districts falling into the hands of the former enemy. Uruzgan, where Australian troops served for close to a decade, could be the first entire province to fall back under Taliban control as foreign militaries withdraw from the war-torn country. It's not fear that they'll come back. They have come back. They never left, and now they're gaining ground. This is a lieutenant general talking about it. Was it worth it? Well, as we face the prospect of a savage retribution by the now ascendant Taliban, and I think a return in some ways to the dark ages for Afghanistan, it's really hard to say that it was worth it. That doesn't sound like we're leaving behind a country that's stable enough to fight off for the Taliban. Like, this isn't just like a boogeyman that, you know, the abstract threat to the country. No, they're actually here, and they're fighting, and they're taking ground. That's the problem. Well, like, anarcho-doomerism, like, again, like, that's, you know, that's the problem with this whole situation. Like, how long do we stay? Do we just end up staying forever? Like, since, like, for, like, the last 10 years, I can tell you that the conversation around the Middle East is that we need to stay because we need to, like, you know, to stabilize the country. You know, we can't leave without first stabilizing the country. Like, I get it. That's been the conversation for a decade now, where we've talked about how we can't leave now. We can't leave behind a vulnerable country. Like, I get what you're saying. So we just stay there forever? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But it doesn't seem like now is the right time to pull out. And to be honest, we funded many of these militants. In my opinion, it's a racket, and again, the power that B don't want stabilization of the Middle East, or employment over there would never accomplish that. Well, I mean, like, yes, so like a lot of the chickens coming home to roost. I get it. Until Afghanistan no longer needs that aid, I'd say help develop the country so that the Taliban has no power. I know, and it's a situation either way. As much as I don't like foreign military intervention, I prefer that over a country that's under the control of the Taliban. Well, I mean, anarcho-doomerism seems like it's happening. It seems like the article opened with that America is going to be pulling out. Where are we? United States media reports suggest American troops could complete their withdrawal or retrograde within days after President Joe Biden outlined an exit strategy in April. And it talked about... Where is it? I don't know. It said somewhere that America was going to be out before September 11 this year. So yeah, it's crazy to imagine that's actually happening for real. We just have to convince them that it's the way to money and power, which, yeah, it can be done if right. I just don't know where I'm at anymore. I feel less left and more just a random critical thinker. I see lefties now defending wars, saying we need small business over a minimum wage hike, etc. I mean, small business is always preferable to big business. But hey, why can't we do both? We can do small business and we can do minimum wage, right? Raising the minimum wage. You know what's funny about minimum wage in America? When people talk about $15 is a livable wage, like, Americans have been gaslit so hard on minimum wage because like $15 minimum wage is roughly the same, like, converted to the Australian minimum wage. And I've worked jobs that are, barely above minimum wage, and that is not a livable wage. Here's like the thing that Americans don't get is it's like when you turn 18 and you get a job, like a real job for the first time, and you're earning money, you might be living in your own place, and you're thinking like, wow, like, this is awesome. Like, it's so different to being a teenager. I'm getting so much money now. And then as the months go on and you're paying rent, you're paying bills, you're paying for your phone, you're paying for petrol, you're paying for groceries, you start to realize that I'm not actually earning that much money. Like, when I first started, it felt like a whole lot because suddenly I've got hundreds of dollars coming in. But actually, all those costs of adulthood add up, and suddenly you're not earning that much money. And that's the thing that I feel for Americans who are fighting so hard for a $15 minimum wage. $15 is jack shit. I get it because, like, so many jobs, cafe staff earn like $2 an hour, which is fucked. Like, to them, $15 seems like so much. It's fucking not. It's nothing. That's jack shit. It's really not. It's not a livable wage. Higher wages over minimum wage. My point is that lefties now siding with Petit Bougie. Come on, mate. No, they're not. I'm on the minimum wage hike with you. Like, I feel the left seems so backwards now. Higher wages over small business. Personally, I think we need to give every citizen a living wage regardless of employment, but we're off a long way. Absolutely. UBI now. I'm glad they have everyone work for Amazon with a $20 minimum wage. I don't know about Amazon. With a $20 minimum wage, then small business is paying $7.25 an hour. $20 should be the minimum wage. It's $20. I don't know. How much is... Let me check how much that is in Australian money. Let me see. USD to AUD. Because all that, like, stupid shit that was coming out a few months ago, people being like, $50 minimum wage. Like, that was dumb. $20. That's $26.79 Australian. The minimum wage in Australia, I think it's 20... Let me check what it is. So it's roughly $15 America. It's... Oh, shit me. It's $20.33 an hour. Fuck me. I've worked jobs that are like $21 and something cents. It's practically minimum wage. Like, 80 cents more. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist. Like, like the meme about lefties don't know economics, sure. So I can't say if 20 is too high or not. Like, I would say, like, a livable wage would start to come in at about $18. Like, maybe 20, I don't know. Again, I'm not an economist. But people running around saying shit like $25, like that's too much. You'll destabilize the economy. But I could see somewhere between $18 and $20 as an actual livable wage. $15 is not a livable wage. I've seen multiple self-proclaimed lefties shooting down minimum wages over small business. I haven't seen any lefties saying like we need to support small business over minimum wage, because that's the right-wing argument is that raising minimum wage hurts small business. Like, what lefties have you seen saying that we need to support small business over minimum wage? It's a common talking point in lefty US talks around wage now. Like, from who, though? There are a lot of lefties, if not so lefty idea. Well, yeah, like a $25 minimum wage. I'm just here to doom it out while I wait for 10 seconds till climate midnight, to be honest. Okay, well, yeah, like, hey, don't doom it over minimum wage. Like, I was talking about the heat wave in Canada the other day, so if you want something to doom her out over the 120-degree days in Canada. I won't name drop, but there's a couple even here on stream. Ooh. Oh man, now I want to know. What? Because I haven't seen that at all. I haven't, like, do you mean like streamers or do you mean politicians? Because I haven't seen anyone who's been like, forget minimum wage. I feel $18 might be a good start. What does that come out to annually? Alright. And plus, remember, like, we're talking gross. We're not talking net. You don't get $18 in the bank. You get, whatever it is after tax. Or at least you do in Australia. I don't know how America works out. Oh, no, you don't. Wait, hang on. Wait. Because Australia has, like, GST. Like, when I go to the supermarket and I buy groceries, like, a very small fraction of that will be added on as tax. So America works differently. Yes, some streamers and some lefties are no IRL. Okay. I mean, I support small business because it strengthens communities. Like, I'm a huge advocate of small business because if a business is owned locally, it's staffed locally, people then take their money and spend it locally, and it boosts the local economy. Rather than just having like Walmart or something where, sure, like it provides jobs locally, all the money goes to head office. It goes out of the community. So this is why, like, poor communities, to raise them up, you need to cultivate small businesses. Because just having like a McDonald's in an impoverished community, okay, that provides some jobs, but most of the money from that business is then taken out of the community and sent back to head office. But if a business, like instead of like an actual local restaurant rather than McDonald's, if that's owned locally, then the restaurant owners live locally, and then they go and spend their money at other businesses in the area. So that stimulates the economy. So like, I support small business in that aspect, but I don't get, like, we can do both. We can do a minimum wage hike and support small business. It's weird that anyone would be saying like one or the other. 5 times 52. Okay, so $18 an hour is $37,440 gross per annum. Climate is the biggest doom pill. Don't worry. But look, I have a lot of faith in Zoomers. All right, like the can's already been kicked down the road from the millennials to the Zoomers. Doesn't seem like the millennials are going to do anything to substantively combat climate change. But hey, I figure that the Zoomers will have, I have a lot of faith in the Zoomers. All right. Personally, I don't really care about small business. I've been abused more at small business than corporations. Now, who's not talking like a lefty? Come on. You defend big business over small business? Come on, mate. I think we put small business on a pedestal too much as a society, in my opinion. It's often used by the right and now left that they're often the reason we can't raise wages. Okay, I would never use small business as a... I would never use that as a defense against raising minimum wage. Considering the stranglehold that big business corporations have over our countries, a minimum wage would be preferable. Like, until we can get to the point where we can use small business to take over areas where big business has domination, we should use minimum wage. So anyone who's not saying that, like, that's dumb. We can do both, and we should do minimum wage in the meantime. That sounds more than fair for a minimum wage. Yeah, like it's like that's getting to the point where it's a living wage, because $15 is not a living wage. What about small businesses that become big businesses? Oh shit! Oh shit! Fuck. When I say small business, I mean like I talked about, a business that's owned locally and staffed locally, where people spend their money locally. I don't know, like, I haven't studied business, so I don't know the potential that small businesses have to become big businesses. I don't know. Yeah, I don't mean you use small business as a blockade. Well, if small businesses have to go under to raise minimum wage, I say let them. If you can't afford to pay your employees a living wage for your business to stay afloat, then you shouldn't be in business. Also, how do we even define small business, to be honest? I know small mom and pop shops with one location that bring in millions in straight profit after overhead. I think small business, at least in America, is defined as any business with under 500 employees. Like, when I talk about business, a small business, like, I'm really talking about, like, mom and pop shops, but like, the definition of small business, yeah, is not as... It doesn't sound small business when we talk about 500 employees. Is it by how much money? Well, yeah, like, I think it's 500. Yeah, if you can't pay a livable wage, fuck off. This idea of, like... I don't know, I'm really keen to look into who's saying, like, oh, we can't do livable wage because of small business. Because... like, I've worked jobs that have put the rights of employees last. And if you can't look after your employees, if you can't give them livable conditions, if you can't give them a livable wage, then you shouldn't be in business. Like, of course, business, its priority is profit over people. But if you can't afford to pay a federally mandated wage, well then, maybe you're just shit at business. Just saying. So, I mean, like, especially like in a conversation around big and small business, absolutely, big businesses can afford to pay a livable wage. So yeah, do livable wage first. And until we can start to decentralize the power that giant corporations have over our countries, let's have a livable wage, and then we can shift to more of a focus on small business. But don't worry, if I saw people on the left advocating for that, then yeah, I would be taking the Doom pill too. Far out. But yeah, to sum it up, $15. I mean, it's a start. I'll say that it is a start. It's like how Amazon likes to talk about, like, oh, we pay our employees $15 an hour. I mean, they any kind of profit that employees gain from that is lost out in paying for shit like healthcare and all the other side effects that working with Amazon has. Oh dear. Anyway, if you're enjoying the stream so far, it would... Oh, this accessory may not be supported. If you're enjoying the stream, then it would mean a lot if you would follow me. You can also jump over to YouTube and subscribe to me there. If you're enjoying this talk about workers' rights, I've actually got a video that I've been planning for ages, and I'm actually getting around to making it now. Prepared content. I started writing the script last night. It's going to be about Amazon and their history of anti-unionism. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I've got all the resources together now, all of the research. So I'm writing up the script. I'm going to try and film it over the next few days and try and get it out next week. But it's going to be fun. Everything that I've seen so far about Amazon and their shady history has been... it's pretty doomery, but it's going to be a fun video. I'm really going to enjoy making it. So hey, jump over to YouTube, subscribe to me there. Personally, I think the less that labor is divided by companies, the easier it is to build solidarity. Maybe. The reason I say I'd rather everyone have $20 all working for Amazon is because then there is no division between laborers and classism is put right in the front of them to the extreme and kind of pushes them towards realizing their positioning in capital. But at the same time, it centralizes a lot of power within Amazon. I don't know. It feels like a bit of a dangerous gambit. I don't know. Even like the last company I worked for, the one that treated me and everybody else who worked for them like shit. At one point, or last year during the pandemic, I tried to get everybody to mobilize and take action and join the union. And it was like wading through wet cement. Like, the people that work in these kind of conditions, the people like who work for that company, and the people that work for companies like Amazon, there's a great deal of fear and apathy towards the corporation. There's the fear of losing, as bad as the conditions that you're working in, being paid barely above minimum wage, having to work 60 hours a week to actually make ends meet, like having extra roles given to you for like a very tiny pay increase or none at all, like having to take on extra duties without extra compensation. As bad as those conditions are, people people fear homelessness and unemployment more. Even if you might be working a really shit job, people are deathly afraid of not being able to pay their mortgage, not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their bills, being unemployed, especially during a pandemic. It was really difficult trying to get through to everybody that collectively we have a chance at actually holding the corporation accountable. So even people that agreed with me would simply be too afraid. Now there's also, like I said, a degree of apathy where people just don't care. Usually it's young people. But even people of an older generation who have been in that system of exploitation, been working for corporations like that, where they've been taken advantage of their whole life, they've just kind of become numb to it. So even in corporations like Amazon, even though people know that they have that collective power, they're afraid to use it because if they fail, they know what the result is. It's like we saw recently with the Bessemer, Alabama unionizing vote, how that vote failed, because obviously Amazon did everything it could to make the vote fail. People just in the end were too afraid and too apathetic to what they, towards Amazon. I just think that once Amazon owns most everything, which it probably will eventually, maybe one day I can own a business that keeps people stuck in capitalism, realism, will be one less propaganda tool. And also concentrating labor will admittedly only hopefully get them in the right mindset. That's true. It's funny how everybody cares about the free market, but no one wants to talk about monopolies. I don't know. I don't know. Even at that point, I think people might still be like, well, start your own business then. I mean, people say that now in Australia, where two media companies own 90%, over 90% of our media, with one company owning 2/3 of that. But hey, no one's talking about breaking up monopolies. So yeah. Really quickly, I have to run to the bathroom. So I'll be back in a minute. Everyone take it easy. Be right back, right? Don't go anywhere. Alright. Actually, Fungus, are you still around? Are you still hanging around in the chat? I was looking through the Twitch notifications, and I see here that Gobunist has followed me, and I missed the notification when it popped up. Gobunist, I'm fairly sure that I banned you not that long ago. Like, I swear that I... Didn't you turn out to be like a tanky or a Nazball or something? Yeah, like, I swear that I banned you. I was just, like, actually, a Fungus, I was just gonna say, like, haven't I seen you hanging around Demon Mama's chat? I swear that's where I know that name from. Anyway, Gobunist, I swear, like, there was something untoward about you that I'm pretty sure that I banned you. So is this another account? Yeah, that's what I thought, actually, a Fungus. Welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hell yeah. Demon Mama is a good streamer. I like her content. I mean, you might have, I don't know, like, you might have seen me hanging around because Louis Vuitton, same name. Yeah, we need as many streamers, as many lefty streamers as we can, alright? Especially as an Australian, because, hey, if you're enjoying the stream so far, it would mean a lot if you would all follow. Jump over to Twitter, follow me there. Head over to YouTube, subscribe to me, because down here in Australia, we don't have any big left-wing streamers. Like anarcho-doomerism, if I can try to force-feed you, like a cat, the hope pill. Let's look at the left-wing progressive streamers that are out there right now. When I was growing up, I didn't have that. I didn't have the online left. I didn't have BreadTube. I didn't have the lefty streamers that we have now. I didn't have that kind of influence to radicalize me towards the left. Like, I lived through Gamergate. I lived through the anti-SJW arc. I'm fucking lucky that I didn't go down that path. I was de-radicalized from the far left to, I guess, like, social democracy kind of level. It took me a while to come back around to being far left. But, look, now we have this massive online presence of progressive people. I mean, yeah, sure, like, they can't get along and they argue with each other constantly. But the fact that that conversation is actually happening, that's fantastic. That's just radicalizing young people towards the left. So if there is a hope pill, that is it. But here's the thing. The point of this whole arc is that we don't have that in Australia. All of these progressive streamers, they're in America. Or they're in Canada. There's no one in Australia. Like, we have some big Australian YouTubers, but we don't have a big lefty streamer. Like, the biggest Australian political streamer, not streamer, YouTuber, is Isaac Butterfield. Now, I don't know if he's far right, but his content is absolutely far right. He has 1.6 million subs. Massive Australian YouTuber, especially for Australia. That is huge for Australia. And hey, we need a left-winger to combat that. Because there's a lot of Australian youth who might be interested in politics, but they just won't go looking for the American side. I found it because I was interested in it, and I went looking for it. But unless, the algorithm might not recommend them foreign content, they might just stay in Australia. If they stay in Australia, they might end up, watching Lewis Spears or watching Isaac Butterfield. So hey, get a big lefty streamer up. Actually, a fungus, you are absolutely based. Come on, alright? Is that an Umbreon? What's that Pepe wearing? Is that Umbreon ears? Oh no, what is that? Where's that emote from? Actually, a fungus, you are absolutely based, alright? Oh, it's sweating. Alright. Nah, you're all good, alright? And like, any imp is welcome in my chat. And hey, like, I'm an imp too, alright? I hang around in like lefty audiences all the time. My doom isn't about the lack of lefty presence, it is a lack of practicality of getting anything done, be it reform or revolution. I'm pretty pessimistic in the sense that we can all talk a lot about great ideas, but are pretty powerless to enact them in any way. I understand the feeling of powerlessness. It's one that I experience as well. As unpleasant as it may be, we have to be pragmatic about what we can achieve. We have to look at how far that we've come and how far we can go. And look at what's like at the national, like, oh, okay, let me back up a bit. I was about to say that on the national level we have talks about Medicare for all, but I mean, okay, Medicare for all has been talked about in the past. Like, it was one of Obama's promises, which wasn't delivered on. So like, there's a doom appeal. But hang on, we're talking about $15 minimum wage. We're talking about, we have at the presidential level talking about protecting the rights of trans and queer people. We have to be pragmatic. I wonder if you like. There's a streamer called Paul's Ego that I've watched for ages, and he's talked to Vosh a couple of times, so you all might have seen it. In the last conversation they had about a week ago, he talked about the need for a new national labour movement, which is definitely how, like, that's a very feasible avenue to push towards more progressive ideals, more workers' rights ideas. In Australia, and America, there absolutely needs to be a new national labour movement. And I mean, that's where streamers can come in. The idea of radicalising people towards unionism, radicalising people towards worker activism. Because the only way that we're going to make any change is if people get these ideas out. And I get that the clock is ticking on climate change, but like, we can't, like, we're not going to make a huge sudden change. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. We're going to have to suffer a bit more from climate change before we actually take meaningful steps to, what's the word? I don't know, to holistically address the problems our society's facing. I won't get in the way of people trying, I just personally find it futile. Well, hey, there is things that you can do. Join your union, support politicians at the local level who are more inclined towards protecting minorities and for systemic reform and for being pro-union. help out in mutual aid when you can, in whatever capacity that is. There's lots of things that you can do as an individual. The idea, like the system works to make us feel helpless, to make us feel insignificant. The best thing that you can do to counter that is to participate in collective action. Like, look at the BLM, like, come on, like, look at the BLM riots, the protests from last year. All of it. Like, all of it. The peaceful protests, the not-so-peaceful protests, the riots, the fights, the destruction of property. Like, look at that collectively, in its totality. Now, while I would, of course, not advocate for any kind of political violence or for any kind of destruction of property in furtherance of a political goal, never perish the thought. But look at that in terms of what it was as a movement of people. Like, this is something that did unite a people towards collective action. So, it happens. It's possible. We just need to give more people of colour voices, crack down on voter suppression, and more progressive bills will be passed. Absolutely. Not to doom, but I did see a thing come out from the Supreme Court today talking about voter rights and talking about how, I can't remember the wording, but it was something about how, the Supreme Court, it's from how it was worded, it seemed like they were in favour of voter suppression. But, that's a big thing. That's a conversation that's happening at the moment. Look at what's being talked about. We're talking, there's a conversation about voter rights and voter suppression and about abolishing the Electoral College. These conversations are happening on these topics where, as if they were possible, as if it's actually possible. It's on the table to abolish the Electoral College. Now, we're not there yet, but it's actually been talked about in a legitimate way. Like I said, absent a extreme uncomfortability, we will all just stay on the Monopoly board. Look, I think things are improving in some respects. We had Bernie Sanders almost achieve the presidential election twice. Obviously, the DNC. I'm not going to defend the DNC, but at least we didn't go even further down the road to far-right fascism. But we have these ideas like $15 minimum wage, abolishing the Electoral College, actually being talked about on the national stage as possibilities and not just empty promises. The politicians at my local level want to reinstate public firing squad because lack of injection fluids for death row. Oh boy. Oh man, just get rid of the death penalty. What? We're running out of injection fluid, huh? Should we get rid of the death penalty? Nah, just go back to firing squad. I also saw stories about states talking about bringing back the electric chair or even Zyklon B in some cases. I don't know how much lefty ideas are welcome there. Welcome where? Oh, you mean on the national stage? Medicare for all, abolishing student debt, changing education to be free. These are topics that Bernie Sanders talked about on the national stage. Bernie getting fucked is why I have no hope for progress in electoralism. In my opinion, electoralism is for marginal gains to be backslidden at best and harm reduction at worst. All politics is harm reduction. Harm reduction is a good thing. I was talking with somebody earlier in the chat about different electoral systems in different countries. They were from the Netherlands, and they were talking about how when they have their elections, they have 16 parties to choose from. That's not 2 parties, and then there's 14 other small parties. 16 parties. In countries like that, parties have to form 6-party coalitions to achieve a majority. It's so different to America. It's so different to Australia. Australia has ranked choice voting, but we still very much have a 2-party system. So the 2 big parties will have to form coalitions of smaller parties to achieve a majority, usually. But imagine that. Imagine living in a country where you have 16 viable choices. and they have to form a coalition with each other, like 3, 4, 5, 6 party coalitions to actually achieve a majority. Now, I know that seems like so far removed from America or Australia, but there is ways in America that it can be changed, like abolishing the electoral college, getting rid of first past the post voting. That's actual change that's been talked about. That is possible. Like New York just had it just introduced ranked choice voting, and it had its the election for its mayor via ranked choice voting. It was a disastrous vote because a bunch of like simulated votes were tallied into the result. So the first use of ranked choice voting in America didn't have a good start, but like it happened. All right, ranked choice voting happened in America. I meant lefty ideals aren't welcome in my local politics for lunatic death cult that is the GOP. Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've seen a few lefties not talk about it in detail, but kind of talk about nationalism a little bit in the conversations. And I feel like the knee-jerk reaction that lefties have to nationalism doesn't do them any good. Now, I'm not like... with the thing about like talking about nationalism in a left-wing context, it's a very fine line. It's a very tight rope that you have to walk if you're going to try and appeal to right-wingers about left-wing ideals through the lens of nationalism. But if I was going to try and convince a crowd of conservatives or a crowd of right-wingers about why we need workers' rights and unions and less foreign corporate influence in Australia, I would do it through the lens of nationalism. I would talk about how the Chinese government has too much influence in Australia, and about how businesses in Australia left the country because we allowed some CEO to just take the jobs overseas, and about how the corporations have too much influence over Australia, but at the same time, the money that they make doesn't go back into the Australian economy. You can ride that ideal of nationalism to radicalize people towards left-wing ideals. Now, obviously, like I said, it is a fine line because it's very easy to slip into the Nazbol vortex. But I would do it through the lens of nationalism, and I'd make it clear that everyone who wants to come to Australia and call it their home is welcome. Because at the end of the day, we're all Australians. Like, we don't need to be fighting amongst who's an Australian. We need to be fighting against who's opposed to Australia. And like the CCP business is opposed to Australia. Like, what does it matter what race someone is when we're talking about business influence in Australia? And that's the kind of thing, like, I would talk about how, if we ever want to bring business back to Australia, then we need to change our business model. We need to change it to more of a worker cooperative, because, hey, even if we ever do bring business back to Australia, which we won't, what's to stop the CEO from sending it back overseas in 5-10 years' time? Well, if we want Australian business, then we need to get rid of the CEO, make it a worker cooperative, make it democratically owned. It's about strengthening the Australian economy. These are Australian jobs. Like Australian businesses owned by Australians, staffed by Australians, who go and spend their money locally with Australians. To me, this is the kind of frame to present these ideas in a way that more reactionary-minded people can get behind. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong, but with all the forces opposing the radical changes we need, and in the time frame we need it done, there's a reason I have doomerism in my name. Come on, there's hope as well, alright? As I've said, I very much understand where you're coming from in terms of doomering and feeling like there's no time. I mean, there is no time, absolutely. We have to wait for the Zoomers to grow up a bit, because for whatever reason, there's this attitude that you need to be old to be in politics. Whatever. But we have to be pragmatic. Like, a revolution will never work. We need to be pragmatic in what we can achieve and how we can go about achieving it. I mean, I think there's some very real possible changes that could be made that could lead to greater change. And that's stuff like abolishing the Electoral College, introducing ranked choice voting. Hey, who knows? Maybe even outlawing lobbying. Wouldn't that be something? I ticked that box. I'm 36 and over-the-hill millennial. Oof! Actually, a fungus. Your generation failed us. Why did the millennials not do anything about climate change? You kicked the can down the road again to the Zoomers. I mean, like, I'm technically a millennial. I think I'm, like, 1 year out of being a Zoomer. So, like, I identify way more strongly with Zoomers. Because millennials are, like, 40 now. Like, older. Millennials are, like, 45 now. So, fuck me, I'm not 45. Thanks, millennials. But hey, like, no hate, actually, a fungus, alright? Like, millennials are still welcome in our chat. Unless they make cringy TikToks talking like boomers to Zoomers. I did a global warming awareness presentation in elementary school. I tried. See? That's direct action. That's mutual aid. Thank you, alright? And elementary. Elementary is like... Because it's elementary, middle, and then high school, isn't it? So you must have been like, what, 12 back then? So like... 25-ish years ago? Far out, man. This conversation about global warming has been happening for that long. Like, when did an Inconvenient Truth come out? When was that? 2006. Fuck me. It's been going on for that long. 15 years. Ugh. I was talking earlier on stream about a Twitter post that Marianne Williamson had put up. How she was saying, she was talking about the conversation about climate change has shifted from prevention to mitigation. And she was saying how, like, we've basically been gaslit on climate change, and now the conversation is so seamlessly shifted from prevention to mitigation. And yeah, like, the world public basically was gaslit on climate change, where we did nothing about it, and now that things are starting to get a whole lot worse, suddenly the conversation, it's no longer about, like, what can we do to stop it? It's like, okay, like, all right, we'll do something about it, all right? But, you know, we're talking reduction now. And it's like, thanks, you gaslit us for decades about this threat. It's a global threat, the greatest we've ever faced. And now you want to acknowledge it. Anyway, enough doomering, alright? Like, do I have any positive content? Okay. Alright. This isn't exactly positive content, but it's at least something we can laugh at, alright? Alright, let's have a look. So, and I get, like, this is Doomer Fuel as well, but alright, we'll have a laugh. So, this is from... It's our old friend, Prager University. Now, I think this is in response to the conversation right now about DC becoming its own state. Because PragerU has been, spamming on Twitter the last few days. Just spamming the shit out of the American flag. Because, like, one of the arguments against DC statehood is like, ew, it'll be ugly at 51 stars. Anyway, so they released this video on John Adams, the second president. Now, was John Adams the Trail of Tear guys, or was that Andrew Jackson? Yeah, I think it was Jackson. I don't know much about John Adams, so I'm going to learn. Now, I hear that you learn about US presidents in school, but I have also heard that it's a little bit of... It's through some rose-colored glasses, so I'm interested to hear PragerU's take. I want to learn about US presidents. So sit back and enjoy, and let's see what they have to say.
Everybody knows what happened on July 4th, 1776. America
I don't.
was born.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like, 1619, stay mad.
But 3 days earlier, on July 1st, independence hung in the balance. There was a great case to be made not to secede from Great Britain. The colonists had no army, no navy, and almost no money. England had a lot of all three. It would have made perfect sense to bend to the will of the crown, pay some extra taxes, and call it a day. There were
Alright, take it easy, actually, a fungus.
plenty of people in Philadelphia prepared to make that case. They could have easily prevailed, yet they didn't. They didn't because of the words of one man, John Adams. At a key moment in the congressional debate, when the forces against independence appeared to have the upper hand, Adams rose to his feet. Without notes and without any preparation, he made the case for independence. By the time he sat down, the case had been won. We don't have a transcript of what he said. If we did, Adams might rank even higher than he does now among the founding fathers. Thomas Jefferson said years later that the speech was so powerful in thought and expression that it moved us from our seats. Adams was, Jefferson said, our colossus on the floor.
I do have to say, though, it is hilarious when people on the right, like PragerU, like to talk about the founding fathers and independence, when back in the day, they would be the loyalists.
If Washington was the sword of the American Revolution and Jefferson the pen, then Adams was its engine. Brilliant, demanding, meticulous, but often irascible, he was not an easy man to love. At some point in his life, he irritated, if not alienated, everyone with whom he worked. Yet these same people would invariably come to appreciate him. That included Washington, and especially Jefferson, with whom he sometimes fought bitterly. Ironically, for all his cantankerousness, his marriage to Abigail Adams stands as one of the great love stories of American history.
Is this just gonna suck his dick? Like, get to a point already. Is this just like a fan cam for John Adams? Come on. Like, get to the conversation about statues or something. Is this just all it is? Just like, here's an informative piece about John Adams. Okay, we'll look up some of his history after this.
Their correspondence, spanning 5 decades, is a vibrant, living history of the nation's early years. Abigail frankly described her husband as short, thick, and fat.
Damn! Thick boy. Didn't we do a lot of shot for England for a long ass time after we established independence? I mean, like, it's like I was talking about monarchy with that same guy from the Netherlands. Like, the same people who are so, like, anti-Chinese business influence are the same people that clap like circus seals for the monarchy. Like, there's the same people that, remember, like, just a scant few months ago, like, these are the same people who were mourning the death of Prince Philip. All these people who are supposedly so pro-American independence are the same people that are like, you need to show respect for the institution and for his passing. Fuck that. Like, I did a stream where I didn't stream on YouTube that day. I just streamed on Twitch so I could play copyrighted music. And I opened the stream with a picture of Prince Philip playing the Crab Rave. Like, come on. These people aren't anti-hierarchy. They are pro-hierarchy. Back in the day, they would absolutely have stood against independence.
But what he lacked in good looks and physical stature, he made up in intellect, personal integrity, and clarity of thought. Born in 1735 near Boston, Adams relentlessly pushed himself to rise early, work hard, and live a moral life. He strove, in the language of the day, for a life of virtue over vice. He first came to public
Lame.
attention in 1765 when he issued a stirring rebuke of the much-hated Stamp Act. For the next 18 years, he fought unceasingly against British tyranny and for American liberty. dedicating his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to the struggle. These were not idle words. In his 40s, by the time of the Revolution, he didn't fight in the war. Instead, he crossed the Atlantic 4 times on diplomatic missions, braving winter storms, diseases such as pneumonia and dysentery, and British warships. Capture would have meant summary execution. In Europe, as befit his character, he was all business. He helped Benjamin Franklin bring the French into the war on the American side, and he arranged critical loans from Dutch banks. When the war ended, it was Adams, along with Franklin and John Jay, who negotiated the treaty in which England officially recognized the new United States. For all these efforts, Adams was paid virtually nothing. But fortune was never his aim.
He was president. What are you talking about? He was paid nothing. Oh, shit. Okay.
Creating a new, better, freer country than the world had ever known was all that he cared about. As one delegate to the Continental Congress said, "The man to whom the country is most indebted for the great measure of independence is Mr. John Adams." Following the war, Adams served 2 terms as vice president under George Washington and then 1 term as the second president of the United States. Taking over for Washington was a thankless task. Everyone deferred to the great general. To put it mildly, Adams was not granted the same courtesy. Still, the new president was able to distinguish his time in high office with 2 significant achievements. One marked by something he did do, the other by something he did not do.
I wonder if the did not do is going to be abolish slavery, because he didn't do that. I know that.
What he did was convince the Congress to build a navy. Given the strong opposition to any kind of standing military, this was no mean feat. But Adams was adamant that the United States could not become a great nation without a great navy. He pushed through the legislation that made it possible. What he did not do was get the country involved in the war in Europe. France insisted that America join it in its fight against England. France had come to America's aid during the fight for independence, the French argued. Here was America's chance to repay the debt. Adams firmly declined. The infant nation was in no position to wage war for or against anyone.
Damn, played them.
As the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence approached, a 91-year-old Adams was asked to provide a toast for the upcoming celebration. He offered 2 words: independence forever. It turned out to be his last public utterance. How fitting. I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University and author of America's Revolutionary Mind for Prager University. Thank you for...
That was honestly kind of boring. There was no spice in that. They had none of their usual, hot takes. It was just, let me suck the dick for 5 minutes with the second president. Well, alright. That was boring. I'm sorry, everyone. I hadn't watched it beforehand. I thought there was going to be a little bit of something there. I mean, like I said, there was no argument about taking down his statue or anything like that. Alright. Let's see. John Adams. Let's see. Not John Adams Jr. What? Oh, no, it is Jr. Okay. Wait, John Adams' son became president as well? America, what the fuck? Let's see. Where does slavery come into it? Let's see. Political philosophy and views. Slavery. Adams never owned a slave and declined on principle to use slave labor. Wow. Isn't he nice? Before the war, he occasionally represented slaves in suits for their freedom. Interesting. So, wait, hang on. He spoke out in 1777 against a bill to emancipate slaves in Massachusetts, saying that the issue was presently too divisive, and so the legislation would sleep for a time. Right, okay. Interesting. Okay, well, once again, we have another US president who is has the means at their disposal to abolish slavery, but for whatever reason, they don't go about it. Sorry, not for whatever reason, because the time isn't right. Okay. I mean, marriage equality passed in New Zealand when it was, when it didn't have popular support. Support for marriage equality in New Zealand was in the minority when it passed, but like, what does that matter, right? If you want a real laugh at PragerU, I've always loved these satirical videos. I would open it, but if my computer sucks. My computer can barely hold a stream together. So if I open it, it'll crash the stream. Oh, if your chat is on your phone, you can just click that link, just YouTube, basically. Yeah, I know what you mean. The satirical PragerU videos are good. You know, especially the one about, like, talking about socialism. But yeah. I think I might... Oh god, I've been streaming for 2 hours. Alright, I've got some work to do, because like I said, I've got those videos that I want to make. I've got 3 videos planned to try and get out in the next few days. I've written the script for one, started the script for the next, and the last one's going to be much more of a video essay content, so it's going to be interesting. Anyway, thank you all for coming. It's been a whole lot of fun. I love going back and forth with the chat. These are kind of conversations I love, and this is the advantage that you have with being a small channel, alright? You get to be much more of a back and forth with people in the chat, unless they're Nazis, in which case they get banned straight away. So anyway, thank you all for coming. If you like the stream, please chuck me a follow, head over to YouTube and subscribe to me there. Follow me on Twitter. And hey, there's a Discord, you can join through the link down below. And also, as you may have noticed from the screen, we have the daily dono goal to contribute to buying me a pizza. I'm a poor student, but I do love pizza. So if you've got a couple extra bucks lying around, hey, it would mean a lot. Other than that, everybody, stay safe. Don't take the Doomer pill. Take the Hope pill instead, alright? I'm going to force feed it to you. Have hope in Zoomers, join your union, and stay safe.